Welcome to the Game of Life podcast, where we bring you inspiring softball stories, insightful tips from coaches and players, and explore how the game transcends its boundaries to become a metaphor for life. Whether you're a sports enthusiast, a casual fan, or someone just looking for inspiration, you're in for a treat. We'll unravel the tales that go beyond the scoreboard. Discover how perseverance and hard work on the field translates into resilience in your daily challenges. Learn about teamwork, leadership, and the unwavering spirit that fuels success, not just in sports, but in the game of life. Here we are, another week, another episode. Allie, take us from here.
Hey, thanks everyone for joining us back. We have a special guest this week, someone who's a very good friend of mine and been a part of my life for a while. So that is CJ. She was one of my travel ball teammates for a very long time. So we go way, way back to our young softball days, and we're really excited to have her on and hear a little bit about her story. So that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to CJ to introduce herself to all you guys.
Hi guys, I'm CJ. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
So right now I work in the athletic department at Lemoyne as the athletics office coordinator. I'm also um volunteer assistant softball coach for the Lemoyne softball team, and I am also teaching a class this semester, which has been like totally out of my comfort
Yeah.
zone.
Professor. Professor.
Professor CJ.
Yeah.
Professor Barrett, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah,
We
yeah.
keep it pretty laid back. I usually do actually go by CJ.
That's good. That's good. So do you want to take us back to a little bit around the time where we met or how you started playing softball, things like that?
Yeah, or when you
Yeah,
even fell in love with the game, you know?
yeah. I think I want to talk about first time I ever joined a travel team. So I was 12U and I kind of got like recommended. I actually played for the 12U Tremors, which is the organization Allie and I met in, but once we're on 18U. Um, it was kind of the first time like a real taste of like, like the travel ball, the seriousness, and also like how much faster the game was gonna get. And I think that's like kind of funny. Even at 12U, like you notice that. I actually remember my first time I ever got on base. I ended up like walking my first bat. I get on base and I get thrown out. First pitch, being on base. And I was like, oh,
Uh-oh.
but I think that's like when I really fell in love with not just like the game, but also like the process. Um, yeah. So started out at the Tremors 12U, stepped away for a year at 14U, went back to the Tremors 16U, and then Allie and I became teammates on 18U Tremors.
Yeah. How old were we? Because we were playing up. I'm trying to think. We were
I think
like,
I joined the team when I was a freshman in high school, and
yeah,
I think you joined your like when we were sophomores, right?
I
I
think
think I
so.
played
Yeah, yeah,
one
yeah.
year without you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right. That seems like so long ago now. It's crazy. I just remember CJ is one of those people in my life. Everybody has them. I met her and I was like, okay, we're gonna be friends. We're good.
We were
Literally
throwing
from the
partners
first.
on that first day.
Yeah, I know. We were throwing partners first day and then for the next 3 years. So yeah, it's crazy.
I remember when we were on another organization, all the battles we used to have with CJ's team. Every game was like 3-2, 4-3, 2-1. And I just remember there were some awesome, energetic parents on the other team that were always like so loud and happy and energetic. And then when you guys became teammates, it was your parents, CJ.
Allie, do you actually
How
remember playing against each other in 12U when you
Yes,
were on
I
the
do. I do. I know. It was weird because I feel like we were always like I always knew who you were and you knew who I was, but until we met, I'd never spoken to you before, and I think that's why when we met, I was like, we're already friends, like we're fine. And then by the time we got to high school and we're playing each other, she'd be catching and I'd be talking to her in the box. I'm like, hey,
Yep.
CJ. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, good
I
stuff.
was known for talking to people when I was catching.
It's awesome. It's good. But we were locked in when we needed to be. But before I got up and was actually in the box, we would have a little conversation.
Yep.
even those younger years, those were fun battles. But like you both teams, like I look back now at where most of the kids went that played on those teams, like there was some talent like but everybody was just having fun and battling. Like nobody was like, I want to go here, I want to do this. You Allie, other players on both teams were just loving softball. And sometimes I think that's missed today.
For sure. I agree.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's super important too. Just we all fall in love with the game for a reason, and it's important to come back to what that reason.
CJ, how important were your parents in the whole travel softball journey?
So important. And I mean, I always appreciated it and I knew that like they were doing so much for me. But it actually wasn't until earlier this year that I kind of got like a taste for it. Me and one of my friends from high school, we actually took her little sister to a soccer tournament and did like literally the whole travel ball parent thing. Like, and I literally texted my parents and I was like, I have a whole new level of appreciation for what you guys did for me. Like the snacks, the making sure I was like well fed, always had a drink, like always was dressing warm enough, like little things like that. But I also like something that always stuck out to me is my parents always like, we're Team Barrett, like whatever it is, like we'll get through it together. And like that was back literally to from 12U travel ball to like like all through college. Like and I'm like super fortunate that my parents, I they did not miss a single one of my games literally until the COVID year of college. And I know that I'm like beyond lucky because a lot of kids don't get that. So my parents played a huge role and I cannot be more grateful for everything they did and the opportunities they gave me with like allowing me to play travel because I definitely probably wouldn't have been at Lemoyne without that.
And shout out to your parents too, because they're amazing, amazing people. So shout out to them. But I want to go into that too, because one thing, my dad and I talk about all the time is, softball is super important, but when you're going on all those trips as a family, you have to keep perspective of, gratitude, and you're seeing all these parts of the world and you're able to see them with your family and all these people that are important to you. So how important do you think it is to keep perspective, of how grateful anyone who's able to do that really is?
Well, it's not cheap. Travel
Yeah.
softball, travel sports are not cheap. And I know that like there were hard times, but kind of to your point, like my parents and I know my parents, like we don't regret it for a second. Like we think
Mhm.
about all the years we went to Colorado, all the places that we saw, going to Reno, seeing Lake Tahoe, like
Mhm.
and like not only with my parents, but like with my friends, and then like my parents made friends with like obviously like you guys, and
Yeah.
like we made friends. Like my parents still go on vacation with people that we've met through softball. Like I don't think we regret it for a second, like at all.
Yeah, I think going off that too, it's really easy. And I think both of our parents did a good job with this. For example, like if we played 3 games in a day and I played like crap, they'd say, all right, well, let's just have a good rest of the day because we're in California today. Like, stop being almost selfish and having that mindset of, I just want to go sit by myself. No, we're going to enjoy this as a family because this is a really cool opportunity for us. So I think that's what I mean by perspective when I say that too, from from that angle of let's make sure we're taking advantage of this really cool opportunity that we're given.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, tomorrow's a new day. You can't really go back. So especially in travel sport, like when you're younger in high school and stuff, there's just no point in dwelling on it. I mean, there's no point in dwelling on it in college either, but
Yeah.
there's just so much more to it all than a bad game or a bad day.
We had a really good group of not only players on the 18U team you guys played on, but the parents. Like if one of the players were having a bad day, like the parents would equally cheer for everybody still. There was so much gratitude, not just amongst the parents, but the players. And I think it was so important that as much like softball was life, literally, right? Like we're spending all summer playing. But I don't think most of you thought it was your sole identity. And how important was that going into college? Because people play travel, you have limited people on the team, you're playing a lot of innings and it's your life and you get recruited and you're like, oh, this is who I am, blah, blah, blah. How important is it to realize you're a whole person outside of softball when you get into college finally?
I think it's so easy in college to like let softball or a sport seem like it's life and death. A bad game, it, it's easy to make it feel like it's like the end of the world. But there's so much more, and like academics, obviously, but like even those can be like tough sometimes. So I think it's always important to make sure you're setting aside time for like a social life, something like a hobby, like something else. because softball is not life and death. And guess what? Like someday softball's going to end, and you don't want it to look back and be like, wow, that's literally all I cared about, all I focused on. Like you need to invest in other parts of your life because those will be there at the end of the day after a good game or a bad game, and even when softball and your sport is over. So invest in something just as much as your sport is my advice.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with that more. And I think another aspect of that too that I know is important to you is you have to maintain your relationships even when you're going through really busy times in your life, because it's really, really easy to shut other people out when you're going through those times and then look back 2 years and say, wow, I burnt a lot of bridges, or wow, I didn't maintain those relationships the way that I should have. And one thing I've always appreciated about our friendship and even anyone who was on our travel team is we could go a few months without reaching out, but if I said, hey, CJ, I'm struggling with this, can you help me? Like you would do anything that you needed to help me. So I think, how important is it to try to maintain those relationships, one, when you're far away from each other, and two, when you're busy.
And I mean, I know of like times literally when we did this, we reach out and like, how's it going? Oh, it's good. But then you actually get into it and like you're kind of both going through something that's similar and you
Mm-hmm.
can relate to each other and talk about it. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
if you had burnt that bridge or not like kind of invested in that relationship or checked in, like you would have no idea that someone else is going through something just like you and you're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I know there were a number of times in college when a few months would go by and we'd call and there was just lists of things that we were both going through and like four of them were the exact same
Yeah.
thing. We're like, wait, let's talk about this for a
Yeah.
minute. Yeah.
Yep.
No.
And it's so easy to like feel like you're alone in like if you're struggling with not just again not just softball, not just sports, like school, like I am struggling in this class, like just doesn't seem like there's anything I can do to make it any better. But some like people at other schools, like your friends that you aren't don't see every day, like they might have a suggestion for you that someone like your roommate doesn't have for you.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's really helpful to get different perspectives sometimes, especially from friends who have the same work ethic as you or values as you, but you're not so deep in it that you kind of have an unbiased perspective and one that
Right.
you trust as well.
So what I hear you both saying is when you're in the thick of it, no matter what it is, it could be a career, it could be softball, it could be classes. Sometimes you need the advice of people outside your close circle because they can zoom out and kind of see what you're going through in a different way. Because if you're with people that are doing the same thing as you, I mean, you might not get the best advice because you're all just in it. You guys get what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback off that too, that sometimes you might need a reality check.
Yeah,
And
facts.
sometimes it might be someone that is a little bit more removed from the situation that can like is completely unbiased and is seeing it for all that it is.
hmm Yeah, just say, hey, you're being dramatic. This isn't really a big deal. Okay, thanks. Needed to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I touched on it last week. I mean, you all are crazy. What you did and what you accomplished in college isn't normal. And if you're just getting advice from people going through the same non-normal circumstance, I mean, statistics show how unnormal it is. I think you lose perspective of how lucky you are. And I don't mean lucky because you just were put there. Lucky because you work so hard to be in a circumstance where it can be a platform to be so many other things in life.
Yeah, 100%. And with that, I want to pivot to CJ. Do you want to talk a little bit about, during travel ball, your recruiting process, a little bit thought process through that, how it kind of all played out for you?
Yeah. I feel like I was a little bit of a procrastinator when it came to my recruiting process just because I was so nervous that I didn't know what I was doing as far as like emailing coaches,
Mhm.
like what to say when I reached out. And what something it's so funny. I get the recruiting emails now because my name is listed as a coach on the website. Something advice that was given to me that I didn't like know at first was when you email a coach in a school, don't send mass emails. Know something about the school and the coach that you're emailing. Like, hey coach, so you guys had a 500 season last year, like great, or hoping you guys do better now. Something personal to that school, to that coach that shows that you actually care. And it's again, it's not just a mass email.
Mhm.
Know something about that program. Um, so I feel like I was a little bit behind, but the best thing that I did was reach out. first of all, do your research. Know that the schools you're reaching out to have your major. You're wasting your time if you reach out to a school that doesn't have what you want to study.
Hmm.
Um, sorry, lost train of thought.
No, you're good. It's a lot. It's a broad question I just asked you. I'm like, can you reminisce on the past 6 years of your life?
Right.
Yeah, be personal. Look for a major.
Yeah.
Yep. So kind of like know what you're looking for, narrow it down for yourself before you go wasting other people's time and yourself. Um, and then the best thing I did was I went to camps, like even the ones that have multiple coaches at them. Go to camps, especially if there's like a handful of coaches that your schools, coaches of schools that you're interested in going to. And then if there's some that you're like, if you've narrowed it down even further, I definitely recommend going to those colleges' camps because not only do you get to get in front of the coaches, but you get to tour the campus. And I think you also kind of get to compare yourself a bit to the other people at the camp, which I think is helpful. Again, keeping things in perspective and reality. I was never going to go to like an Oklahoma camp, of
Yeah.
course. Um,
Obtainable goals is what we call that one. Yeah.
so those are my best pieces of advice. I obviously went to Lemoyne for a camp to even like further my recruiting process with them.
Mhm.
But before that, I got in front of the coach at the time at one of those mass camps. It was actually over the winter at the Dome in Binghamton. And that's kind of how I got in front of it was Coach Marino at the time. That's how I got in front of him first and how we created like a dialogue based on how I'd done at that camp. And then
Mhm.
emailed back and forth a little bit, talked on the phone a bit, went to a camp on campus, and then that following week, which was actually it was February of my junior year, is when I ended up committing to Lemoyne. So I guess my advice would be like, don't procrastinate. But if you do, like, it's okay. Everyone is on their own timeline and everything works out, and you'll find a place that's right for you. And that could be Division One, two, or three. I mean, I committed to a school that was Division Two, and I was reaching out to all like schools at all different divisions. I didn't totally know, but I think after talking to the coaches and hearing kind of about like the day to day at each different level and each different school, like you'll find like what's right for you.
And I think going off that too, like one thing that seems to get missed out on is every level you play at is competitive. Like it really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I think there's like a lot of weight put on that. And my question, turning it back to you, is what do you feel was different of what you thought was important to you going picking a college and what was actually important to you going into a college? Because for me, I know those things are really different. I'm like, oh, I would like to go somewhere warm, but really like there were other things that more important to that than me within the first 2 years that I got there.
So I knew that I didn't want to be outside of a 3 hour radius from home. I wanted to be within like an easy drive, something where like God forbid I had to go home that day for
Mhm.
something, which ended up happening. I wanted to be within a 3 hour drive, so that was important to me for sure. I was never looking somewhere. I know you guys have talked about this. I was never looking somewhere that was a flight away.
Mhm.
Um, I after looking at a couple of different schools, I realized that going to a small school was more for me. Drove around Buffalo one time, not for me, way too big. Um,
Too much going on.
yeah. Lemoyne, I liked the size of Lemoyne. And then something I didn't know was important to me, but then once I got to Lemoyne, I like valued so much was small class sizes and how easy it was to create relationships with my professors. I think as an athlete, it's a little bit easier sometimes anyway, because they kind of like you have to be communicating with them. But even like in the fall when softball wasn't affecting my attendance in class, my professors knew my name. And still to this day, like I talk to them, I talk to a handful of them like often. And one of them actually like, is the reason I'm teaching a class. And we talk like once a month, like have
Yeah.
lunch or have a call. Sorry, there's like sirens. I don't know if you can hear
We
it.
don't hear it. We don't hear it.
Um, so that was something that I didn't realize was gonna be so important to me, but it was. And then the way a team interacts with one another, and sounds so silly. We always tell recruits this too. We loved going to the library and just like spending time with each other. Like we would go to the library like as a team almost every single night, which sounds so like sure you did. I'm sure you got a ton of work done. Like we did. We did. But the
Yeah.
best part about it was, oh, this kid's 2 years older than me and is in this class, like already took this class. Hey, I'm gonna go over and ask them a question. Like the
Yeah.
fact that we just like had each other every night in the library and like kind of just had the same values. Like we cared about our academics, and I don't know what I'm trying to say now.
No, I mean, going off that too, that totally resonates because I think you have to make sure that your values align with that of not just the team, but the coaching staff as well. Because, I mean, you and I both know, and so does my dad playing a college sport, those people become your family. You spend more time with them than you do anybody else in your life, and you start to turn into the people you associate yourself with a little bit. So I think that should be a selective pick that you make and something that's really important when you're looking at whatever college you pick of, do I look up to these people? Do I see traits in them that I would like to emulate in myself? Because ultimately, I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, we were definitely like a work hard, play hard kind of team. Like we took our academics seriously, but then also like when it was time to have fun, like we had fun all together as a team. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. We were together in the library, we were together on the weekends, we were together on the field. Like, and that was again something that I didn't know, and I also didn't realize was so different from other teams until I started to hear about other people's experiences, even like some transfers that came in or some of my old teammates. Like I realized that
Mhm.
that isn't how it is everywhere.
Not
And again,
normal.
that's something I didn't know that I was necessarily looking for, but I'm so lucky that I got at Lemoyne.
I want to touch base quick on when you said when you went to camps, like, oh, we knew we weren't going to an Oklahoma. Like, I get that, okay, but how important the travel ball you guys played? You literally played games against people. Oh, that's the pitcher that's going to LSU. I mean, they'd come in big. Remember some of the teams that would come in the big like travel buses, logoed on the side, and you didn't back away from anybody. And I mean, I'm a realist. I'm not saying you guys could go to Oklahoma. I don't mean that. But how important was it that you played so many people around the world? A, to realize how many kids play softball and how hard it is. But did it give you confidence to realize you can compete wherever you decide to go? Does that make sense? Did I ramble too much?
No, I think it's actually so funny because what I feel like when I played travel and even in high school, like the name on the jersey meant so much less than I feel like it did when I got to college. Like I didn't care that we are playing the Ohana Tigers, a team completely out of California with kids that get to play literally all year round, and then there's us that only get like
We've
five
had
months of
one
nice
practice
weather.
outside prior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it is so cool to know like, hey, I got a hit against that girl that's going to LSU.
Mhm. Yeah.
But
I
it
think,
also like, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go ahead, CJ.
I was gonna say it kind of really does like put it into perspective when you get to college and you know you can kind of hit everything and hit off of anyone, or at least you feel that way, having played at kind of a competitive travel level like we did.
Yeah, and I think it both humbles you and gives you confidence because
Yes.
I think we saw from a young age, okay, just because I'm one of the most talented players in my area, I still have a lot of work to do when it comes to comparing myself to girls all across the country, right? Like just because, you're on the most talented team in your area and that's awesome and it should give you confidence, it's good to kind of get your butt kicked a little bit somewhere else and say, "Oh dang, reality check. I have a lot of work to do." Instead of like I always say, and I feel like athletes will understand this, I would almost rather lose a game by one than win by 20 every day. And
Yep.
and that's hard to swallow for some people because I obviously want to win, but I think there's a lot of value in competing and coming up a little short because that's going to teach you a lot more than just walking all over people ever would.
Yeah, completely
Let's
agree.
let's talk about that for a minute. The great Lou Bishop. why is everybody laughs when I say his name? No, I always pick on him. I always tell him he's a
Well,
lot
let's say
smarter.
who Lou Bishop is for those
Yeah,
people that don't.
I'll get there. I'll
Yeah.
get there. So I always pick on him, saying he's a lot smarter than he looks. He was your travel coach, the organizer of the Tremors, and he did things a lot different that we weren't used to at first. Like you'd go to tournaments and you'd bat 13 people. He didn't necessarily care how pool play went. You would go play whoever, and he wasn't afraid to lose, I guess is what I'm saying with his process. And I look back at some of the big, I mean, as far as the travel world goes, some of the big upsets you guys had against teams you had no business beating because you just went and played softball like you said earlier, CJ. You didn't care what the jersey was. you guys all had each other's back, and you're just going to go play softball. And I get it. You had some huge upsets. You got the snot beat out of you certain times by people too. But that's part of playing on a big stage like that. So looking back, how cool was that?
It was awesome. I think about the when we placed third in at Colorado, which for anyone who doesn't know, Colorado is like this massive tournament
Mm.
and like kind of the best of the best go there, honestly. And so for us to have placed third was crazy, and then get invited to the even bigger tournament in Boulder the following year was we all kind of looked at each other like, how did we do this?
Yeah.
But and I think this is like so interesting because you hear college coaches now kind of, at least some of the ones I'm around, feel that travel softball in the way that they do it, kind of like playing everyone and there's no competitiveness within the team, like is not ruining softball, but it makes it so hard for when kids get to college when they're not playing to like understand like why, because everyone just gets to play to get recruited and nobody cares who wins and loses. And I don't completely agree with that idea because kind of like what you just said, like, yeah, Lou would bat 13 in a lineup, like, which not everyone did, but um, hold on.
No, you're good. You're good. There's a lot of thoughts going on too. I can't.
He would just the next game, if 12 made the last out, 13 would lead off the next game. It blew my mind.
Right. And but I never like yet. I think there's something you said though with the fact that like not always necessarily caring about the name on the jersey. Like we were still competitive. I know that we were all playing and maybe somebody else was going to play because the coach was there to see him, but it was never like, oh, here we go, like we're sacrificing a win so this person play. It was never like that, and we all still cared about winning.
Yeah. And I think the cool thing about travel too is like if we saw a coach there to watch someone on our team, we're like, put her in for me. Like, put her in, like, go do it, show your stuff. Like, it was never, oh my gosh, why am I not playing? We would look at him and be like, hey, so and so's here, get her in right now. Like,
Right.
whoever's up, go hit for her. And I think that's really special too, just because we all knew our role at that point and like we wanted them to achieve their goal because we're all competitive, but we saw her working so hard and we wanted that for our teammates too.
I
And I
got to
think it,
interrupt quick. Oh, well, I was just going to say that's the point. Like college coaches will say, you're not competing enough. But I think you're learning something much more valuable that it's how to be a good teammate. And I feel like at the end of the day, college teams when you get to college, you're all good enough to compete. And how that comes out is one thing or the other. But if you can't be a good teammate, I don't think that ever makes for a good team. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, I was kind of gonna say something similar. Like I think there's also something said about like once you get to college, like you're a freshman or sophomore, like you obviously want to play, but also having an understanding and again a reality check of like, man, I am working so hard, like I'm doing so well, but person playing above me like is actually just doing better. Like and it sucks. Like you're doing well, like but it still might just not be good enough and you have to wait your turn. And I think that's what's so hard, but that's also like what gets why some people like don't like the way travel programs are run. But like we all just kind of said, like it might just not be your turn right then.
Yeah.
And that is looking at like the team as like you're putting the team above yourself.
Yeah, and going back to how Lou coached too, I think one thing you have to remember is when you're playing on a travel team of that level, we're all our own hardest critic anyway. If we do something, we don't need someone screaming at us at that point because I already know a coach I'm trying to go to college at is watching me there, so I don't need my coach screaming at me too. I already feel bad. So his tactic that I loved, like I remember we'd make an error, he'd be like, "Yo, try to use your glove next time." We're like, "All right, thanks, Lou." Like, and now I'm laughing because he's like, "Hey, you got it." Like people make mistakes all the time. So he was more of a positive person in our corner, which I think is much needed in travel ball sometimes. That being said, there was a time and a place, practice, warm ups, things like that to say, hey, get your crap together. But when it came to game time, he just had all of our backs and was going to do anything he could to help us get recruited and reach our goal too.
Yeah.
Um, but going off that too, CJ, I know you're talking about in college how it can kind of be a reality check those first couple of years. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you can still try to find value or be a good teammate in either knowing your role or just adding value in different ways that may not be on the field that you're used to?
Yeah. So when I got to college, I actually played quite a bit my freshman year, like probably like a third of our games, I would say. Which is kind of like a surprise to me. Like you don't hear that very often. Like I was a catcher, which is like, kind of a bigger role and position on the field. However,
There's
my
only
sophomore
one.
year,
There's only
yeah,
one catcher on the field, right?
yeah.
I didn't know
And
that. No.
Yeah. No, but there's a lot of, I
Nothing.
mean, when you come in, I mean,
I
that's it's hard to beat out.
yeah,
Sorry, I'll keep my mouth shut.
it's okay. Um, However, my sophomore year we actually got a new coach and I I just kind of like felt like I was like struggling a bit. Like she was pushing us harder than what I was used to. Honestly, she probably pushed me the hardest out of any of my coaches and exploited the fact that I maybe like wasn't as good in some areas as I thought I was. Um, so I wasn't really, for anyone who like isn't aware of like the timeline, my sophomore year was actually the year that COVID hit, um, in the spring. So we got to like we had only gotten to play our two like preseason trips. So we were in Florida and I was the only freshman that didn't get to play on the first trip in Myrtle Beach. And we get to Florida and I'm like still not playing and I was feeling pretty bad about myself. And I got an opportunity to catch and I blew it. I don't even know why she gave me a chance, but I was just in such a bad place mentally. I did so bad and I realized I was like checked out. I'm like, I can't believe I let myself get like that. Like finally got an opportunity and I was so like woe was me that I was checked out mentally and I did so bad. Next day, I have no idea why. She gives me a chance to pinch hit or be a DH. I can't remember which one. And I hit a home run. But I like had to have like that like I let myself get so mentally checked out and feel so like I was feeling so bad for myself. Um that by the time I got a chance and like my opportunity, I literally blew it. So then we go back. I think it's probably my junior year now. And I had a talk with one of my assistant coaches and he was like, "Hey, like he could tell I was like feeling a little down. He's like, you're good." He's like, but she needs you to be better. Like you need to do just you need to push yourself and be better. And to this day, like that conversation and my coach at that time, like she put pushed me to be better than I like. I didn't even know that there was like more to give until her. And I think there's something to be said for that. Like it sucks. You don't like to hear it and you don't like to go through it, but I was a better player for it in the
Yeah.
end. And then another thing like helped me like how I talked about kind of about how I got so like checked out. Like the best thing I did for myself was try to find like value in the role that I was in. And at the time it was a like being a bullpen catcher. And again, it's easy to get checked down, just go through the motions, but I'll use again bullpen catching as an example. Like you can use that time to get better. Like don't just be that catcher that just throws their helmet on and goes in and catches in the bullpen. Put all your gear on, work on your blocks, work on your framing, and then biggest like thing you can do is give good feedback to your coach and the catcher. Like, hey, their drop ball's hitting the dirt today. Like, basically, got to know that. Hey, their curve didn't warm up that great today. Like, that feedback is valuable. So just kind of finding value in any role that you have, like whether it's pinch runner, make sure you know like is the pitcher missing low? Do I have a chance to just like steal on a ball in the dirt? Things like that. Like find a way to like stay checked in. Because when you, I learned the hard way that like checking out mentally, like when you get your opportunity, you won't be ready for it.
Yeah. And do you feel like that time that you spent maybe not getting as much playing time made you better once you started to? Like, do you think it gave you a different perspective, at going into being a starter in those next couple of years?
Yeah, for sure. And everyone will say it too. Like they could tell, like I found a new love. Not that I lost the love for softball, but I found like a new love for softball my junior year. And I just had so much fun. And I was splitting time at that point. I was having so much fun just in the dugout. Like you just feel lucky to be there, like be around your teammates. Like again, it's about more than just like how you play and the results of a game. Just
Yeah.
have fun.
I agree. And one thing I was talking about the other day to someone is I think not playing for a while, because I my story was similar. I also didn't get a lot of playing time my first few years of college. And I think too, like when you're not playing, you say, "Oh, I wish I was playing. I would have done this. I would have done that." But when you're playing, it's also really hard. Like it's just different mentally. So it's almost like you have to choose your hard. Like you have to realize that any role of anyone on the team is hard. It's hard not playing. It's hard playing. It's hard being injured. It's hard coaching. It's hard. Everybody has a different side of what they're trying to do. And I think just being able to wear the hat of all of those roles at some point in your career gives you a more so respect for what everybody's trying to do and just appreciation for your team as a whole.
Right. And I think it is easy, even as like a player, like if a starter's struggling, complaining, and you're like, what do you have to complain about? Like you're playing, but you're exactly
Mhm.
right. Like you don't know what someone's going through or what they're feeling or the like fight they have going on in their head.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, when we're seniors and we were starting, freshmen come in and say, well, they get to start every game. They don't get it. Well, you weren't here for the 3 years that we didn't start either. So that's the thing too. Yeah, like you just said, you don't know what everyone's gone through. So I think it's just keeping that perspective is really important.
Yep, for sure.
I'd like to. I don't have any type of stat on this, but I think a message to people going into college, again, coming from the guy that's never played softball. Okay, but I sometimes the highly recruited kid can't handle it when they don't play. And the kid that comes in learns to deal with it early on if they're not playing right away, and then handles it later. I guess at the end of the day, adversity 101 is coming for you, whether you start out playing and then you don't play and you have to work your way back. Very rarely does someone just hit the ground running as a freshman and go 4 years and be all world. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but your hard's coming, your adversity's coming. Do you handle it early on and figure it out before you quit, or do you come in, do well, handle it, and then finish out your career? I mean, what do you guys have to say about that? Did you see that a lot?
Yeah. um Even like after I would say I was basically a starter my junior, senior, and fifth year. I probably went through my biggest slump. Like after being a starter, I went through my biggest slump last year, my fifth year, in the middle of the season. And I was like, what the heck? Like I'm wasting it. And it was so easy to like kind of let these like crappy thoughts like um fill my head. And I'm like, what do you like hold give yourself a little bit of reality check, but kind of like how you're gonna deal with that. And like you just said, like that happened to me in my fifth year. Like it's so easy to like go through that time without even kind of like realizing it. So just kind of like stepping back and like again getting some perspective. But exactly you said, like I kind of went through something like my sophomore year. I went through it again a little bit like some adversity again in my fifth year, like something different though, you know?
Yeah, and I think there's nothing you can do to protect yourself from adversity. Like just because you went through it once, you're not like, "Woo, I'm good for life." Now, I wish that was the case, but all you can do is learn how to handle it better. Because every time you go through it, I think you're equipping yourself with new tools to say, "All right, next time this comes, I've gotten through it before. I've gotten through it every time so far. What did I not do so well in the past that I can get better at this time? Maybe I didn't handle it well last time, and now I know that, so I can handle this situation better." So I think it's just not saying, oh, I made it through, like nothing bad's ever going to happen to me again. It's learning how to see the adversity when you're in it and say, all right, what should I do in this moment to help me get through it the best that I can? And sometimes that's leaning on other people too. Like you don't have to go through it all by yourself. It's okay to say, hey, I'm going through this. What perspective does anyone else have, or has anyone else been through something similar that can help me get through this?
Yeah. And I kind of like what your dad just said, like your career is literally this. If I didn't literally just paint that picture for you, like playing my freshman year, not really playing my sophomore year, allowing myself to like mentally get to a bad place, playing again my junior, senior year, struggling a little bit at the middle of like my fifth year, and then kind of finishing out strong. Like it, like you said earlier, like it's not linear. It's not. And it probably is for some people, but at least for me, and I know for a lot of others, it's not like that. But I think that if I had never gone through harder times like in my beginning few years of college, like I wouldn't have known like how to kind of get myself out of it as quickly as I did last year.
So now that you're on the other side of it, because you get recruit emails, you'll be looking at people. If you're interested in a player, I'm guessing you and the staff feel they can play at that level. How important is body language and the reaction to failure is it to you?
Huge. It's so easy to play well and feel so happy and be a good teammate, but it's almost good to like go and watch a kid like have a couple strikeouts because are they still going to go back to the dugout and be positive? Like personally, like I would always give myself like the time it took me to put my shin guards on, and then that was it. I was done. Like back to cheering from like forget about it because like you can't go back. I literally would give myself the time it took me to put my shin guards on, and that didn't mean pouting, but like the time to be like, oh, crap, that sucked. Like, and then I was on to the next, and I was back to being like it. It's how you go back and talk to you. Like, are you still high fiving your teammates? Are you letting your teammate know like, hey, she got me on this pitch, you know?
Yeah. So now you as a coach, I'm curious, what are kind of things for you where you watch a girl play and they're like cross off the list sort of behavior? Like if you see XYZ, you're like, absolutely not. Nope. And I guess the contrary of that, if you're like, oh, that's awesome.
Um, I don't know. I would say not necessarily looking at recruits, but we have a freshman on our team this year, and she is just like always locked in, literally always absorbing every bit of information you can give her, always asking questions. And she like significantly stands out, like meant like how she like just like carries herself, how she like you can tell like she's listening to every word you are saying, even if it's not to her. Like if it's just like um she is like always cheering. She kind of like keeps herself like a little bit separate, but like in a good way. Like I don't know how like if I'm explaining that correctly, but just like and I know it's not possible like stay locked in all the time, but just like staying locked in and like even sometimes like she'll have an error. Oh, okay, like but then like she comes in there, she's like, hey, do you think if I do XYZ next time, like I can avoid this? Like not necessarily dwelling on like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. It's okay, how am I not gonna let it happen next time? Like
Mhm.
if that makes sense. So not
Yes.
necessarily looking at it as like a coach to recruit perspective, but looking at someone like one of our younger players. Like so that's kind of like what stands out to us. And then what is like a no-no is probably like obviously like the helmet throwing, but even just like hanging your head after something or like if like um you hear like you see how they react to direction and coaching is like a big one. If they're like, yeah, yeah, whatever, like you tell them to do something and then they just go back and do the same thing they did the first time. Like so frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah. One that was always interesting to me too was how they treat their parents after games too, because I think that's a big deal. I mean, I think that says a lot about the person they are, the player they are, the respect they have for other people. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, our parents always are going to give us like their 2 cents and their opinions or, hey, why don't you do this next time? And it's, you already know what they're going to tell you, you know, like, but it's not blowing them off. It's they care about your journey just as much as you do, and they're just trying to help. So again, it might be something like, you know, you've heard it before, but just being like, okay, you're right. Like, thank you. And not being like, yeah, I know, like, whatever.
Hmm.
How you interact with your parents and like are you thanking them for the granola bar that they're handing you and the water like just overall like politeness character like
Yeah. Dad, what are your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
No, well, I mean, we talked about mom and I usually did a very good job of being stoic. And then when we got in the car, we'd all have our vents and our bitch fests like we used to do, right? And
Mhm.
I think it's super important going back to perspective, CJ. Like before you say anything in public around people, like is it really that big a deal? Was there a lesson that was learned there? And is my emotion getting the best of me? And that can happen to any player and any parent, right? And it could happen to anybody at one time. But if it starts happening multiple times, I would think that's where the red flags come up.
mm-hmm.
So I got a question for you as we're wrapping up. Now that you're old and retired, makes me sad. I mean, I think it was so much fun watching you two develop and play and the love
Yeah.
you guys had for the game. But what would you say to a high school senior or junior, somebody that's either getting recruited? Well, let's go this way, somebody that got recruited. What would you say to them about what to expect when they get to college?
Get used to being busy but find a way to enjoy it being busy and having a routine actually made me like a better student and like player I actually always had better grades in the spring during season than I did in the fall. Nothing like nothing, no like drastic change, but like um, being busier made me a better student. So I would say being busy, get used to kind of hurting a bit physically. Like it's the norm. It sucks. And then another thing which I think is like something you don't realize, um, try even like when you have an opportunity to go home, try to stay at school. Because for me, I was never, I know this isn't the same for everyone, but I was never really overly homesick until right after being at home. Like if I went home for a weekend, that those first couple weeks of the following week, I was like so homesick. Like, and I got to see my parents quite a bit. Obviously, I was only an hour and a half from home, but and they would come to me quite a bit, and they were at most of my games. But try your best and like stay busy. It helps. Um, Try not to go home all the time because it's just, I think it's just good to stay in a routine at school.
I couldn't agree more.
That's really good advice. Does it seem crazy that you're past the player journey and now, like, did you ever picture yourself doing what you're doing now?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it's, I mean, I most people know this. Like, I wouldn't say coaching is like my passion. It's not silly. Like, who knows? But it's not exactly like being a head coach is not like where I see myself in 10 years. But I like what I'm doing. And I think that, like, hopefully, the value that I add as like a recent player and having gone through like all of that, like, helps them. And that's kind of what I like doing for them and being there for them and offering maybe a different perspective, as we talked about, a different perspective than they may get from anywhere else. So this is definitely not where I saw myself, but I'm very fortunate for this opportunity and hopefully I'm um, valuable, I guess. And then as far as like teaching goes, is I did not grow up when I was in kindergarten. They say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Being a teacher was not one either. And then I was a marketing analytics. That was what I got my undergrad degree in, and then I have my MBA in marketing. And right now I do a lot of business stuff. I do a lot of like the billing and handling a lot of money and things like that. Like again, not where I saw myself, but I'm actually learning so much and doing all these things, learning a lot about what I like and what I don't like. And some of it's surprising and it's totally like putting me out of my comfort zone. But I've actually like I feel like I've gained so much. So not where I
Yeah.
saw myself at
And
all, but I'm very grateful.
and last question going off that too, how important do you feel like it is to stay open to new opportunities and maybe be okay with steering away from what you thought you wanted at one time?
I kind of like what I just said, like I'm learning so much about what I like and what I don't like. And while I like this part of this job and I don't like this part of this job, and I feel like it's all helping me get to a point of like figuring out what I definitely want to do and where I do want to be from 10 years from now and not saying no to like teaching was so scary to me. And for the first couple weeks, like I was so nervous every day going to class. Now I look forward to it. Like,
Yeah,
and I think in general, it's helped like my public speaking so much. And I don't know how I would have ever like gotten better at it if I wasn't doing that.
that's awesome. I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. That's so cool. It's awesome.
Thanks. Thank you.
I know, yeah, when we have guests like you on that I've known since you were yay big or yay old, and to watch what you've accomplished and done and seeing you, I think what makes my heart the fullest is seeing a lot of you girls giving back to the game that gave so much to you. So that makes me happy.
And I think that that's if I didn't feel like I owed so much to softball and like Lemoyne, I don't know if I would have said yes to that. I'm so glad I did because I'm enjoying it, but like I owe so much to softball and like work ethic for uh how I learned good work ethic and things like that.
And all the people like in our lives because of softball. It's crazy.
Like Allie.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. She's like, wasn't talking about that one.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, I know.
It's true though.
CJ, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Again, something out of my comfort zone.
Yeah. You did
Yeah,
great.
but you didn't hesitate. You didn't hesitate. Allie said. You said, "Yep."
Yeah, I know. It's awesome.
All right.
All right.
Well, we'll have to see you in person soon. We appreciate it.
Yes. Thanks, CJ.
Yes.
All
Yep.
right. See you, CJ.